Martina, and let me introduce you to Teresa. We bring our respective backgrounds together to help organizations transform. Mine in helping develop design capabilities and leadership, and Teresa in bringing organizational transformation and leadership development to help our customers become modern product organizations. That's a fancy way of saying we're trying to help our clients solve real customer problems instead of pushing products on them. Well, we come from different backgrounds. We quickly realized when we were working together that both of our approaches are based on learning, they're based on empathy, and maintaining a growth mindset. We really want to start the story here. One of our first times of working together, and we were brought in by a large European financial organization. They were transforming to become more customer-centric, to be able to change, to respond to change in the marketplace more quickly, and to be more innovative because the market was being disrupted. They asked us to come in and help them with a pulse check on how their transformation is doing, on how they might be able to accelerate that change. They had initially asked us to just work with their teams. They were quite surprised when we asked to engage the leadership team as well, but they were happy to oblige, and we were able to talk to 20+ senior executives as part of this work. And I briefly want to share with you a few of the themes that have emerged with that work. It was really interesting. We heard a lot of good things from what this leadership team was doing, and they'll be quite visible in the transformation effort they were in their organization. You could say in some sense they were showing up, but it was also quite obvious to us that there was something underlying this effort as well that was actually hindering their success. And it really got us thinking about this concept of showing up. So we went back and had a look at what does showing up mean. And on the one hand, it needs to be visible, and this leadership group had really demonstrated how they were visible in this transformation effort. You know, they were showing themselves to the team. But there's also a second aspect to showing up. That means to be revealed. We were quite intrigued by the second meaning of it, and we really wanted to go back to the work and have a look through this lens at how this transformation effort is holding up. And here are some of the things that we've found out. First of all, almost all of the interviewees were speaking to the fact that the CEO and the senior leadership team were really engaged. They were very visible. They were leading from the front. They were in town halls and on video stressing the importance of this transformation work. But as we dug deeper into the topic, it slowly revealed itself that while they were speaking to this transformational change, their behavior hadn't really changed at all. So they were still directing, they were still instructing, they were still adopting a top-down command approach. You might say that they were talking the talk but not walking the walk. Secondly, they felt as a leadership group that they were entirely on board with this transformation effort. But as we dug deeper into this theme, what it revealed itself was that it seemed like the leadership group had decided on a direction and just felt everyone else in the organization should just fall into place, rather than really understanding what it takes to become a more customer-centric organization. And thirdly, on that point of customer centricity, they all spoke to the importance of actually understanding their customer needs, being close to the customer, and understanding their relationship to the organization. But again, as we dug in deeper, what we understood was they had been around for 20+ years in this field. They really felt like they already knew everything there is to know about their customers. They hardly took the time and made the effort to actually connect with their customers. And they were really using old information to make future decisions. This was really interesting to us because, as we said, it was they were showing up, they were being visible, but what they were revealing about themselves was actually showing that there would be trouble ahead and challenges ahead in being successful in this transformation.
So this is not uncommon. So this story that Martina just told is something that we could probably tell about multiple clients. So many leaders who, again, had that level of visibility and showing up from that sense, use all the right language when they kick things off, and we might even say are buzzword compliant. And even doing some interesting things around trying to actually signal differences in the culture. So instead of wearing the suit, wearing the cool jeans and the hip t-shirt or the hoodie, or even, as you can see on this picture, the neat sneakers. So these different things that signaled we're going to do something different as an organization. We are trying to transform, but there's still, as Martina said, this disconnect. So between what they were saying and how they're showing up, and what the actual, what employees actually hear, and that's something that disappears pretty quickly, because if there isn't this commonality between what you're saying and what you're doing, employees are very going to quickly say this is just the flavor of the month, and we don't actually need to invest in this. So leaders need to show up differently in this sense. And so as we started to think about, what are some key organizational traits that really where we've seen this done well, what do those leaders exhibit? And there were two things that really resonated with us: humility and curiosity. So starting with humility. So many years, organizational culture, processes, performance management, rewards and recognition, all tell us that, in order to progress, we need to demonstrate our knowledge. We need to have expertise in something. We need to show people that we know this. And we need to use that knowledge and that expertise then to direct the people who work for us, and to tell them this is what we need to do, and this is the way that we need to execute. And the challenge with that, in an environment that is very dynamic, as Martina was talking about, where there's a lot of change, is that if you constantly have to go back and ask that person who knows, you're not going to be very agile. You can't respond. And it takes a lot of humility from a leader to recognize as well that, in fact, the person on the front line may know way more about that problem than you do, and that they may be the right person who should actually go make that decision. So Jim Collins, there's a lot of research on this, but Jim Collins was a former Stanford business school professor, and actually looked at organizations that sustain excellence over a number of years. He used 15 years. And he documented in a book, Good to Great, which some of you probably have read, that one of the absolute key things for those leaders who led these companies that sustained this excellence was that they had intense personal humility, and that they brought that to work every day, so that they knew what they didn't know, they knew what they were good at. They were able to also reduce this sense of difference between leaders and between themselves and the people on the front line, and make it so that they were all able to participate. So one of the other interesting things that we were both reading recently in the Harvard Business Review that kind of resonated with us was a woman who came in to be CEO of WebMD. And if any of you aren't aware of that company, it's sort of one of the early pioneers in bringing information on health, wellness, and medical, so that you could individually be an advocate for your own health. And she was actually, when she came in, she hadn't not been in any of these industries. She hadn't been in startups, she hadn't been in this space, the health space. She was actually from the media, so television and media space. So when she came in, you might have thought that her first thing to show that she was the right person for this job, and that she had the right expertise, so there wouldn't be questions, would be that she would have a 90-day or 120-day plan and say, these are the things we're going to do. But she took a really different approach. She instead went around and she did a listening tour, and she went and talked to a bunch of different people within the company to say, what do you do? How do these pieces fit together? Tell me about what works at the company, what doesn't. And this quote we found was a really kind of lovely example of therapy. So she went to visit their engineering department, which was in Silicon Valley, and interestingly enough, it was a group of male engineers, and they immediately said, what do you know about software development? And she said, nothing. And so we thought this quote was great. She said, this is how much I know about engineering. However, I do know how to run a business, and I'm hoping you can teach me what I need to know about your world. So her way of being very humble and saying, you know what I know what my strengths are, and together as an organization, we're going to figure out how to make this work, because we're all going to be participating in this process. So this concept of humble leadership really sets you up to be a learning organization, which can help you if you're on a transformative path.
And let's secondly look at curiosity. Similarly to humility, people climb the ladder and they think they need to learn less. And because they're rewarded for what they know and not what they don't know, And this reinforces a pattern of continually being reliant on what you already know, really creating confirmation bias. Secondly, there's also a lot of research showing that leaders are concerned about this curiosity in terms of making it more challenging, that it drives risk and inefficiency in the organization, and that it might make people more difficult to manage. The reality in our world today, though, is that with rapid change of technology and changing expectations from customers, companies who don't employ curiosity are going to fall behind. This is not a new concept. Henry Ford, at the beginning of the last century, set himself the ambitious goal of bringing automotive mobility to the masses, and he singularly focused on driving down the cost of production. So they were incredibly successful to start with. The Model T was gained them over 50% market share in the US car market. But while they continued to focus only on efficiency of improving how to create this thing, they missed that the market had moved on. They missed, you could almost say that they lost their curiosity and missed that customers started demanding more different options. They wanted different types of models of car. Whereas General Motors, who were for the longest time looking at opportunities to compete with Ford, realized this new demand in the market, and they catered to it. They created a lot of different types of car models, and they overtook Ford as the main car seller in the US at the time, in the early 1920s. But so Ford was really left behind because they stopped innovating and they stopped experimenting on how else they might serve customer needs. We see this pattern with our customers and with organizations all the time. They're deeply passionate about trying to solve a problem, but once they actually find a solution, they become very protective over that and trying to be efficient around making sure that there is no change to that successful outcome. But we believe that if you don't employ curiosity, you're going to be left behind in today's rapid change of technology and rapid change of also what customers expect from you. I want to draw attention to one underlying behavior in humility and in curiosity, and that is to ask questions rather than pretend you have all the answers ready all the time. But it also means that you need to listen intently and also apply your learning. And it's how we motivate people to follow us as leaders, but it's also a proven way to connect with your audience, your customers, with your audience, to really understand their needs and to solve their problems meaningfully.
So I'd like to tell you another story to bookend this. So this is a story of a European-based pharmaceutical company. And they came to us and said, we really need to learn how to be more innovative in bringing our products to market. And because they needed to be able to tailor them to a lot of different markets, so from Brazil to Russia to Belgium, et cetera, we need to really understand our customers so we can tailor how we get these products to market. So the leader who had brought us in, as we started to get ready, we were going to do a week with several teams to take them through a lot of these different techniques about how to think about these types of things and how to really bring that sort of curiosity into their work. And so what we found out was pretty interesting at the beginning because he was actually very well liked, but people were really apprehensive about taking anything to him because he was known for having some pretty strong points of view and not being at all shy about sharing those points of view about what folks should do. So the first day he kicked off the week, and we had talked to him before and said, you need to talk about some of these things, and he did a phenomenal job. He talked about the importance of, be curious, go out, try to understand more things about your customers. You're going to run into organizational challenge. People are going to ask you why in the world you're doing that within the company, but I have your back, go do it. And so people were like, wow, okay, that's interesting. So he showed up, he was really visible in that sense, but what was actually far more impactful was what he did the rest of the week. So the first thing he did, and he was going to Latin America later that day, but the first thing he did was he didn't get on his email, he didn't get on his phone, he went and sat down with the teams. And he sat at one of the tables and he started actually working through things with them. And he then left for Latin America, but he had learned when he was sitting with the teams that they were actually going to do presentations at the end of the week to tell what they had learned, what they wanted to do next. And so he changed his flight to come back because he felt like it was really important for him to be there. So he flew to Latin America, came back, and we had talked to him about when you actually are interacting with the teams in these presentations, it's really important that you ask questions differently. So you don't say, hey, why didn't you look at this? You know, I think you should do this. Instead, help me understand how you learned that. What data, what evidence do you have? And so when we were doing the presentations, it was so interesting because you could actually see on his face the struggle to do it. And it wasn't, he wanted to do it, but he was so conditioned over years and years and years to ask questions in a very specific, or sorry, to offer direction in a very specific way. So when we debriefed, he actually said, I didn't do that very well. That was really hard for me. And I need to learn how to do this differently too. And that was the most impactful thing. That was the way that he really revealed himself. And that team, you could just feel it in the room, the difference between the upfront, you know, hooray, hooray speech and then the actual actions and how much it improved their confidence. So what does this mean? He showed up very differently. And what does it mean for us as women? So, you know, often we hear that being open to say, hey, I don't know all this. I want to ask questions. I need to get some help in doing this. These kinds of things are viewed as, well, maybe that person, maybe you aren't a candidate for a leadership role because you don't actually know all this. And data shows us that this is not true. Data shows us, our experience shows us that these traits, bringing humility, bringing curiosity to things, actually can make a huge difference. So our ask, our challenge for everybody here is for all of us to show up armed with this humility and curiosity, ask questions, have passionate curiosity. Thank you very much.